Come,
join,
arise,
and shine.
wish you all the best.
FX Polytechnic College, Tharuvai, Tirunelveli, 8 km from New Bus Stand.
Good morning to everyone. I welcome all for today's webinar on texture-based image processing. First of all, I would like to thank Almighty for this wonderful webinar. I would also like to thank our management for their continuous support and guidance in all we do. It's my great pleasure to introduce the resource person, Dr. S. Jenica, Associate Professor, Sedu Institute of Technology, who is well known for her simplicity and bundle of knowledge. She has 12 years of teaching experience. Her area of specialization, which includes satellite remote sensing, image processing, and texture-based analysis. She has published 10 international journals, 21 conference papers. She also published 2 book chapters. She has been recognized as a research supervisor of Anna University, guiding PhD and MS programs by research. We were really blessed to have her amidst with us. Okay, without taking much of your time, let me hand over the session to ma'am. Thank you.
In Sedu Institute of Technology. So today I will be presenting on the title Texture-Based Image Processing. So let us have the presentation now on the screen. Just a minute. Today I will be presenting to you on the title Texture-Based Image Processing, and on the slide you can see my email ID from through which we can communicate in future if you need any clarification. And I have also displayed my Scopus author ID, so using which you can have a glance at my publications. So my profile will also be available in Google Scholar. Okay, so we'll now move on to the presentation. So let me give the outline of my presentation today. So first of all, I'll explain to you what is meant by texture and what are texture models. And then I'll tell you some image processing applications where texture can be used. And I'll be telling you, I'll be describing you 2 texture models used for representing texture in gray level images, and 2 others used for representing texture in color images. And then I'll tell you about the advantages of texture over other methods. I will give you my conclusion, followed by references and my publications. So first of all, let me define you what is meant by texture. As the topic for today's discussion is texture-based image processing, it is vital to know what is meant by texture. So according to Gonzalez and Woods, they've written a book titled Digital Image Processing, which was published in 2002. So this is how they define texture. Texture defines the properties of an image that characterizes coarseness, regularity, and smoothness. So texture defines the surface property or the property of an image that characterizes coarseness, regularity, and smoothness. If I have to explain this in detail, then I must proceed to the next slide. So here you can see nearly 10 textures. They have been categorized into fine, coarse, high contrast, low contrast, directional, non-directional, rough, smooth, regular, and random. So first of all, let me just explain to you what is meant by coarse structure and fine structure. So if you are in the fundamental element of any texture image is called texture primitive. The fundamental element of texture is actually called as texture primitive. So if you look at in the slide, you can, if you look at the coarse structure, coarse texture, you can identify the texture primitive. So the size of the texture primitive is large when compared to the size of the texture primitive which is found in fine texture. So the texture, the size of the texture primitive is large in coarse, whereas it is small in fine. So accordingly, the spatial frequencies of the texture primitive also varies. In coarse texture, you can the spatial frequency is less, whereas in fine texture, the spatial frequency is more. Similarly, let us now look at the third and fourth texture. They have been labeled as high contrast and low contrast textures. If I define, so it is contrast is defined as the luminance difference found between the adjacent regions of the image. So you can see in the high contrast image, the range of grayscale values present is more than the range of grayscale values present in low contrast image. So only the third texture has been labeled as high contrast, whereas the fourth one has been labeled as low contrast. So when you and let us move to the next texture, fifth one, directional and non-directional. So as it is visibly seen in the directional texture, you can see the horizontal lines passing from left to right. There's a direction in the pattern or the texture present in the image, whereas it is not present in the non-directional texture. Similarly, if you can look at the rough and smooth texture, the sharp details of the image are present in rough texture, whereas the fine details of the image are present in smooth texture. Similarly, if you look at regular and random texture, regular texture has a kind of pattern or texture repeated all through the texture image, whereas you don't have such a pattern repeating in the random texture. You cannot visualize any pattern, but the pattern that is present in the texture image is labeled as random. Okay, so this is how a texture image will look like. So now I think you will have understood that texture defines the properties of an image that characterizes coarseness, smoothness, and regularity. So this is how we have to model texture present in an image. So now let us move on to the next slide. So here, texture model. So as I already told you, there should be a model available which should be able to represent texture in an image. So that is called a texture model. Texture models usually measure or represent texture at two levels, one at the local level and another one at the global level. So when you look at the local descriptor usually transforms a local neighborhood of an image into a number. So, so that is how I have actually highlighted local neighborhood. So for every neighborhood of size 3 × 3, 5 × 5, or 7 × 7, or 9 × 9, that way it goes. So for such a neighborhood, you can define local descriptor of a texture model. Similarly, when you want to represent texture globally, you have to look for a sliding window size, or you have to represent texture within a window of an image. So a window of an image will have size in the order of powers of 2, like 8 × 8, 16 × 16, 32 × 32, 64 × 64. That way it goes. So for finding the global feature vector, you have to consider a window of an image. For finding the local descriptor, you have to consider a small neighborhood of an image. So a local descriptor, it is usually single number, whereas global texture for a global texture representation, we use a feature vector. That is why it is said we convert the texture into a set of numbers represented in the form of vector. So that will represent texture within a window of an image. So now that you know what is texture and what are texture models, so the texture models are widely classified into several types. I've stated 4 of the types. Statistical texture models. Under statistical texture models, local binary pattern and texture spectrum I've taken up, and I'll be describing to you in detail these 2 texture models. Under spectral, we have several frequency transform methods using which we can represent texture. I have stated 2 among them, wavelet and Geba wavelet. Structural, for structural texture models, they usually consider texel elements like pixel. The fundamental element is called, fundamental structural element of a texture is called texel. So these texel are represented using fractal. So fractal is the method that comes in a structural texture model, and we also have model based texture representation. So I've stated 2 model based texture representation, hidden Markov model and Gaussian mixture model. So out of these 4 types, I'll be explaining to you local binary pattern and texture spectrum in detail. Okay, so to explain how a texture model is found for a texture image, we must first know what is meant by a digital image. So a digital image can be defined this way. The definition has been taken from the book Digital Image Processing by Gonzalez and Woods, and they state that an image is a 2-dimensional array containing m rows and n columns. So and we use integer values or intensity values in the range of 0 to 255 in these particular coordinates. So in simple words, if we can say that a grayscale image is a 2-dimensional array, or a single band image is a single 2-dimensional array represented in m by n size, and each entry will have some intensity value, grayscale intensity value in the range of 0 to 255. Okay, now let us move to the next slide, where the image processing applications are listed. Actually, if I have to list all the image processing applications, then this lab I will know that itself will fill many slides. So I've taken up only generic 2 applications, generic 2 image processing applications, but actually texture is widely used in all image processing applications. Sometimes texture alone is used, or sometimes it is jointly used with other features like color and shape. So texture is very fundamental, and it is used in almost all image processing applications like content-based image retrieval, or pattern classification, pattern segmentation, or even fingerprint recognition, iris recognition, face recognition. So in all applications, you will definitely find texture. Texture is very, very vital in image processing applications. So now, because I've taken up generic applications like classification and segmentation, let me define what is meant by texture-based classification. There are other classification methods also. They will be taking up other low-level features or even deep learning features. But when it comes to texture-based classification, we mean classification is performed using texture features. So here in texture-based classification, what happens is I have in the slide you can see 5 Broadets textures. So Broadets is a photographic album which was released by Broadets in the year 1966. It has got 111 textures. So this is a standard benchmark data set available in internet for all who take up any texture analysis study. So I have shown you 5 Broadets textures. So you can see they are of different types. Some are random, some are directional, and some are rough and some are smooth. So I have taken up 5 Broadets textures. Suppose if I define classification, then This is how I'll be defining classification. Imagine that you have a database of 111 products textures, and your classification system has learnt or has learned all the texture, all 111 textures, and now I give a query image, a query texture, namely D51, and if the classification system should be able to label the particular texture as 1 or 2, whatever it is. So that is the actual meaning of classification. Classification means you must assign a class label to a texture image based on its texture features. So you have several texture images present in the database. Taking one, you must be able to assign a class label to it. So that is the work of a classification system. Now let me explain to you what is meant by segmentation. So I told you classification is assigning a class label to a particular texture image. Segmentation is nothing but for segmentation, the input will not be many textures, but it will be a single texture image. In the single texture image, you will have many textures present. And now our job is to segment the textures present in the image and shade them meaningfully. So we must partition the texture image into various textures, into various meaningful textures, and we must shade them accordingly so that it will give us some meaning. It will convey some meaning. So in short, so if I read out the definition, segmentation is partitioning an image into meaningful regions in the image. In successive slides, I will show you my results obtained for segmentation. Then it will be easy for you to understand what I mean by segmentation. So segmentation, in other words, I can say pixel-wise classification. So I must classify each and every pixel present in the texture image, single texture image, as 1 or 2 or 3, and then I must shade them with different colors. Then that will give me the segmented image. And in segmentation, we have 3 types, namely supervised segmentation, unsupervised segmentation, and semi-supervised segmentation. In supervised segmentation, we must train the system. We must train the system, means prior knowledge about the target class labels of the training samples is needed. So prior training is needed before segmentation. That is called supervised segmentation. In unsupervised segmentation, no training is needed. No prior knowledge about the class labels of training samples is needed. In semi-supervised, only partial prior knowledge is needed. So these are the 3 types of segmentation. And now let us look at the 2 texture models for gray level images. So as I told you, I will be explaining to you local binary pattern and texture spectrum in detail. So first of all, let us take up local binary pattern. So for defining local binary pattern, or for explaining how LBP, in short, is found, then first of all, we must consider a local neighborhood. Remember that I already told you, for finding a texture model, it is usually done at 2 levels, one at the local level and another one at the global level. So at the local level, we will be finding out local binary pattern. So at the local level, we must consider only local neighborhood of the size 3 × 3 or 5 × 5 or 7 × 7. So here we'll limit our discussion to 3 × 3. So we have a 3 × 3 neighborhood, and if you see here, generically we say the center pixel is denoted as GC, and all the neighbor pixels which lie around the center pixel are named as G1, G2 up to GP, where P is the number of points in the neighborhood. So in a 3 × 3, we'll have 8 neighbors. So this one will be GC will be the grayscale value of the center pixel, and G1 to G8 will hold the grayscale values of the 8 neighbor pixels. So this is how we model a neighborhood. And now let me give you a sample calculation for local binary pattern. Local binary pattern comes in two forms. One is called conventional LBP and another one is called uniform LBP. So this slide tells you how conventional LBP is found. So this particular LBP model was proposed in the year 2001 by Ojala et al. So they took up a 3x3 neighborhood. So you can see the values in the 3x3 neighborhood. So this is GC, the value, the grayscale value of the center pixel, and these are the 8 neighbor pixels. So they have been named as G1, G2, G3, G4, G5, G6, G7, and G8. So 8 neighbor pixels. And now our job is in Ojala et al. Explained how S of x can be found. So he proposed a function called S of x, and he defined this S of x using this particular formula. This particular formula says you have to compare the grayscale value of the neighbor pixel with the grayscale value of the center pixel. Excuse me. So if the grayscale value of the neighbor pixel is greater than the grayscale value of the center pixel or equal, then you assign 1. If it is less than the grayscale value of the center pixel, then you assign 0. Now let me just tell you how these 1s and 0s are found for this particular 3x3 neighborhood. Compare 5 with 3, 5 is greater, so you assign 1. 4 with 3, 4 is greater, 1. 3 with 3, so this is 3 with 3, they are equal, so 1. Equal or greater, then 1 is assigned. If the neighbor pixel is less, here you see 1 is less than the grayscale value of the center pixel, so that is why 0. So this is how you find 1s and 0s in the 3x3 neighborhood. After finding 1s and 0s, they Ojala et al. Attached binary weights to all the 8 neighbor pixels. So once we have found the grayscale difference, there is no role for the center pixel, so we don't need the grayscale value of the center pixel anymore. We we attach binary weights to all the 8 neighbor pixels. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. So that's how we attach binary weights to all the neighbor pixels. Now you find the product of these two. Product obtained from multiplying S of x and binary weights. So you multiply these two and put 1 into 1 is 1. 2 into 1, 2. 4 into 1, 4. Whereas here 0, so 0. So that you find the product of S of x and binary weights. So that's and after finding the product, for finding conventional LBP, you add all the products and find the sum of all the products. So that is how it's done here. So this is the actual formula for conventional LBP. You multiply S of x with the binary weights and sum up everything together. So you get 151. So this is the local texture descriptor or LBP, conventional LBP value for this particular 3x3 neighborhood. So now we have found out 151 as the conventional LBP value for this particular example 3x3 neighborhood. This particular conventional LBP can have values in the range of 0 to 255. So we say that it requires 255 bins. Again, same Ojala et al. They thought of improving this particular conventional LBP. So they took up something called or they proposed another local descriptor called uniform LBP with an aim to reduce the number of bins required. So I told you conventional LBP takes values in the range of 0 to 255. So here uniform LBP takes only values in the range of 0 to 9. How it is done? So for finding uniform LBP, they used a concept called uniformity. Uniformity is nothing but you have to sum up the number of 0 to 1 or 1 to 0 transitions. So I'll just move to the previous slide. So here if I have to, for this particular 3x3 neighborhood, if I have to find out the uniformity measure, I must count the number of 0 to 1 or 1 to 0 transitions in a circular way. So now here there's no transition, but if you look at this particular place, you have 1 to 0 transition, so you count 1, and 0 to 1 transition, you count 2. From 1 to 0 transition, you count 3, and here no transition, 0 to 1, again 4. So if I have to find out uniformity measure for this particular 3x3 neighborhood, I will have 4. 4 will be the uniformity measure for this for the example we have taken. So U will be equal to 4. So once you have found the U value for a particular 3x3 neighborhood, now our job is to find out uniform LBP called ULBP. So this has been defined using this particular formula. If U value is less than or equal to 2, the number of 0 to 1 or 1 to 0 circular transitions is less than or equal to 2, you have to sum up all the ones present in the S of X values. Otherwise, you just simply assign 9. P is equal to 8 because P is the number of points in the 3x3 neighborhood. That is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. So if for the example we have taken U is equal to 4, so ULBP value will be equal to 9. Miscellaneous value will be assigned. Otherwise, if this particular condition is satisfied, you have to simply sum up all the S of X values or the sum up all the ones present in S of X values. So that will be the ULBP value. So I'll just proceed to the next texture spectrum calculation. So this particular texture model was present for gray level images in the year 1990. LBP, conventional LBP and also uniform LBP, they were both, I have explained to you, for gray level images. And this particular texture spectrum also has been proposed for gray level images. So we'll see how this is done. So knowing LBP, it will be easy to understand this particular calculation also. So similarly, similar to the previous case, we have taken up a 3x3 neighborhood, and here in texture spectrum, they are assigning 3 possible values: 0, 1, and 2. If the grayscale value in the neighbor pixel is less, they assign 0. If it is equal, they assign 1. If it is greater, they assign 2. So now just compare. 5 is greater than 3, so that is why 2. 4 is greater than 3, that is why 2. 3 is equal to 3, that is why 1. 1 is less than 3, so that is why 0. So that is how the zeros, ones, and twos are formed. Now, because there are 3 possible discrete output levels, these are called discrete output levels. Because there are 3 possible discrete output levels, they assign tertiary weights instead of binary weight. So tertiary weight means 1, 3 power 0, 3 power 1, 3 power 2, 3 power 3. That's how it goes. And now, as before, we have to just multiply these two. So that is what is done here. Multiply these two, and then now you sum up as before. You just sum up all the entries, and you get 4,472. This is called texture spectrum value for this particular 3x3 neighborhood. And actually, this texture spectrum requires 6,561 bins, or it can have a value in the range of 0 to 6,561 bins. It was proposed long back in 1990, whereas local binary pattern was proposed in 2001. Now, having understood 2 texture models for grayscale images, so I told you the texture models are found at 2 levels, one at the local level and another one at the global level. Now we have seen 2 local descriptors. How to find the global descriptors for the local descriptors? So I have just listed the 2 steps. So you take up for finding global descriptor, you have to consider a sub-image or a sliding window of size in the order of 8x8 or 16x16 or 32x32. That way it goes. You just consider a sliding window of suitable size, and then you find the one-dimensional histogram. One-dimensional histogram of local descriptors within the sliding window. That will give you the global histogram. So global feature vector. This one-dimensional histogram found for the local descriptors within a window size will give you the global feature vector. Now let me describe to you 2 more texture models for color images. We have seen 2 texture models for grayscale images. We'll see 2 more texture models for color images. So one is called multivariate local binary pattern. Another one, a modified version of modified version called modified multivariate local binary pattern. So we'll take up multivariate local binary pattern. It was proposed in the year 2005 for color images. The main difference between grayscale image and color image is the number of bands involved or the number of channels involved. So in the I told you grayscale images will have a single channel, but whereas a color image will have more than 1 channel. Now we'll take up an RGB image in general. So for RGB image, we know that we'll have three bands of information. Red, green, and blue bands of information will be present in a RGB image. So I'll just explain to you how MLBP, multivariate local binary pattern, proposed by Lucia et al. In the year 2005, will be found for a RGB image, for a local neighborhood present in an RGB image. So as I told you, there will be three bands. So there will be three 3x3 neighborhoods. So this one I have designated, we have designated this particular 3x3 neighborhood as RR, this one GG, and this one BB. So red, green, and blue bands have been designated as RR, GG, and BB. But for Lucia et al. Found 9 cross relations for the three local neighborhoods. He took up, let us see how these 9 cross relations are found. This is red 3x3 neighborhood, green and blue. And I have also, in the brackets, I've given you the notation used. GC, usually we use GC alone for a grayscale image, but because here band information has to be included, a superscript R has been put in GC. And surrounding GCR, we have the 8 neighbor pixels of red bands. They have been designated as, instead of simply G1, we designate them as G1R, G2R, that way up to G8R. So these are the 8 neighbor pixels in the red band. So similarly, these are the 8 neighbor pixels in green and blue. And I told you 9 cross relations can be found. In the 9 cross relations, we know what is RR, GG, and BB because they are simply 3x3 neighborhoods present in the bands themselves. But let me show you one particular cross relation called GR. So how GR could be found? So for finding GR, in the green 3x3 neighborhood, instead of GCG, instead of the center pixel of green band, you replace the center pixel of R in place of center pixel of G. That will give you GR cross relation. I hope you will be able to find other cross relations like BR, RG in the same manner. So if it is GR, you take up the G 3x3 neighborhood. In the G 3x3 neighborhood, you replace the center pixel of R in place of center pixel of G. So that is going to give you another 3x3 matrix. So this way, between across bands also we can find cross relations, and that will amount to RR, GR, BR. Similarly, for the red band itself, we'll have 3 cross relations: red with green, and red with blue, and red with red itself, and green with green, green with red, and green with blue. So similarly for blue also we'll have 3 cross relations. Altogether we'll have 9 cross relations. So now you have 9 matrices in 9 3x3 matrices in hand. So for the 9 3x3 matrices, you have to find S of X values, LBP. We know how S of X function is defined for a 3x3 neighborhood. So using that, for the 9 3x3 matrices, you find out the S of X values. So here I varies from 1 to 8 because we have taken up 3x3 neighborhood. So I varies from 1 to 8. For RR relation, you find the S of X values, sum all the S of X values. For GR relation, you find S of X values, sum all the S of X values. For BR relation, for RG, so that is how for all the 9 cross relations, you find for all the 9 3x3 matrices, you find S of X values, sum all of them together, that will give you a number called MLBP. So for the previous example, for this particular example, I have made a sample calculation and I found out RR, what is the value of RR, and what is the value of GR, and what is the value of BR. So all and I've summed up, I've given you the sum of the S of X values individually, and finally all of them summed up together will give you MLBP. So this MLBP requires 72 bins because there can be a possible at most for a particular 3x3 neighborhood we can have a possible value in the range of 0 to 9. So let us take the maximum value in 9, and sorry, no, 0 to 8. So we'll have a for S of x values, we'll have a maximum value from 0 to 8. So for all the 9 matrices, you can have a possible value of 8. So 9 multiplied with 8 will give you 72. So this MLBP can range from 0 to 72 bins. And I have also explained to you, I will also explain to you one more model for color images. So this was proposed by me and my guide together in the year 2011. It is just a very small variant from what was proposed in 2005 or from MLBP. So here in modified MLBP, what we did was we just found out the LBP values for all the 9 cross relations. So we summed them all together to give MMLBP. So we found out ULBP for all the 9 3 cross 3 cross relations, and we summed them all together to get what? Modified MLBP. So this modified MLBP takes up 81 bins because ULBP can range from 0 to 9. So for 9 cross relations, 9 multiplied by 9, it will take up MLBP can have values in the range of 0 to 81. So I have also calculated modified MLBP for an example, and I have given you the value which you can verify verify and see. Okay. So we'll now move on to the global histogram. So now that we know how to represent texture at local level for a color image, we now have our job is to find global histogram or global feature vector for texture representation in color images. So for which we'll take up a sliding window size, and within the sliding window size we have to find one-dimensional histogram of all the local descriptors within. So that will give us the global histogram or the global feature vector for color image. So I'm listing you the segmentation procedure using KNN classifier. I hope you all know what is KNN classifier. K nearest neighbor classifier. K will be, if K is equal to 1, it becomes a minimum distance classifier. If K equal to 1 or 2, accordingly the procedure slightly varies. We have to look for that many number of neighbors, K neighbors. Okay, first we'll, so I have listed you the supervised segmentation procedure here. So for which you take up an input image, you extract training samples of size E cross E from the input image, you compute local descriptor for each local neighborhood of the training samples. We have extracted training samples in the first step. For the training samples in each local neighborhood, you compute the local descriptor. And now for each training sample, you will have a global histogram. So find a one-dimensional histogram for the training sample that will give you the global feature vector of the training samples. Now you compute the local descriptor for each local neighborhood in the input image. So we'll take up the training process is over from when we complete step 3. We have extracted training samples, computed local descriptor and computed global descriptor. So training process is over with 3. And now to start the testing process, we are computing local descriptor for all neighborhood present in the, for all local neighborhoods present in the input image. And then we have to extract the test sample and classify the test sample. So first in 5th step, we extract the test sample in the input image. We already we have found the local descriptor. So now for the test sample, you find global histogram. So after finding global histogram, you find the distances between the global histogram of the test sample and the global histograms of each training sample. We have already found out the global histograms of all the training samples. Now you find the distance between the global histogram of the test sample and the training samples. Now you pick up K closest samples. Okay, if K is equal to 1, 2 or 3, then you will be, if it is equal to 3, you will be picking up 3 closest samples based on distance, and the 3 nearest neighbors have been found. You assign the class label of the test sample as the majority of the class labels of the nearest neighbors. Okay, the majority of the class labels of the nearest neighbors is assigned as the class label of the test sample. You go to step 4, that means you extract the next test sample, repeat the procedure till all the test samples are segmented. So with this, I complete a texture-based segmentation procedure. So now I'll just give you some advantages of texture-based segmentation over other pixel-based segmentation techniques available. We know texture models neighborhood. It never takes up a single pixel, the intensity value of a single pixel and comes to any conclusion, but it rather takes up, it models a neighborhood. So that is the major advantage of texture. And modeling the neighborhood, it classifies a single pixel. And then it also addresses uncertainty problem. So there's always uncertainty problem associated with the values, intensity values present in the input image. So that is well addressed, because you no longer take up a single intensity value of a single pixel, but you take up a the whole neighborhood for coming to a conclusion, for assigning the class label of a text single pixel. So we address the uncertainty problem. And if we want to include contrast information in the texture representation, variance can also be included. In that case, it will become a 2-dimensional histogram. That is, if contrast information has to be included in texture, that is also possible. So I'll just show you the results of segmented results for 3 stitched images I've taken as examples. These are the 3 stitched images I stitched for doing experimentation. First stitched image has 2 textures. Here you can see 3 textures, and here you can see 5 textures. So we have horizontal edges, vertical edges, and we have also circular edges. So if a texture model is capable of discriminating between various textures present in this in these texture images, then it will be well and good. So now because I've taken up only grayscale image, so I've used texture spectrum and local binary pattern, and these are my results. So for you can see only there's a minor difference between the 2 textures stitched, but the model is capable of differentiating between the 2 textures. So this is the result obtained using local binary pattern, and this one using texture spectrum. And I told you this one in this particular stitched image, we have different types of textures. And here also I'm showing you the results obtained using texture spectrum and local binary pattern. And here for this particular texture image also, I show you the result obtained for texture spectrum and local binary pattern. These results have been obtained using minimum distance classifier or KNN classifier with k equal to 1, and the texture models which I have described previously. So these are my results. I hope you have understood some concepts at least. So now before I conclude, let me give you a concluding quote. So this particular quote was written by Charles Spurgeon, an English preacher. So we know that if a man wants to live upright before God, he has to have discernment. So he defines discernment this way. Discernment is not simply telling the difference between what is right and wrong. Rather, it is the difference between right and almost right. So, so you see, he means to say that there's only subtle variation between right and wrong. So the variation can even be denoted, or it can even be expressed as the discernment between right and almost right. So with this in mind, even so I told you in the stitched image, you may not visibly see the difference that there are 2 textures present in the stitched image. the difference looks like the difference between right and wrong. There's only subtle difference between two different textures in a stitched image, but subtle difference should be a texture model should be capable of even finding the subtle difference. Then it is considered to be a better texture model. So every texture model is expected to show this kind of discrimination between different textures. So conclusion, texture provides efficient representation of features. This is an efficient representation of features. There may be many features available. Texture is also an efficient representation of features, and texture is either used partially or fully in all image processing applications. I mean to say, sometimes texture is jointly used with other color or shape features. Sometimes texture alone is used for used in many image processing applications. So in many image processing applications, the idea of texture is very vital for understanding many applications, real-time or other applications. So let me just list you the references I have referred for preparing this particular presentation, and I also list my journal publications, international journal publications, and also the conference publications, along with book chapters I have authored. I have given you my email ID for looking for if you want to have a. I have published many papers related to texture. If you want to have a thorough understanding in textures, then you can go to Google Scholar, type my name simply s.jenica, and my Scholar page will open, and you have several open access publications there which you can refer. Thank you very much.
I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. S. Jenica for her explanation on texture-based image processing. I am damn sure the participants were much benefited and gained a better knowledge in this area. Thank you, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time with us. Next, I would thank our principal, D.P. Rufus, for all his perfect logistics support and guidance. Next, I would like to thank Professor Regin Paulson, Professor Jerome Rajkumar, and Ms. Radha Ramya, coordinator of this webinar, for making this event a successful one. Thank you one and all. And next, I would like to thank all my department staff members of computer engineering for their continuous support and guidance. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants from various fields for your involvement, and we are sure we will catch you in another interesting webinar. Thank you.